Well, it turned out to be another bodge. Yes, another bodge in a long line of bodges that I have discovered on this car. So the last time this car was on the channel, I believe I said in that video that it had some sort of coolant leak. It was time to sort this coolant leak out. So I've whipped off the wheel, took a look, and it was pretty obvious straight away from the rust stains from the leak. It was pretty obvious where it was kind of leaking from. It was leaking from just above the drive shaft. But the component, the actual part itself, it's right up the back of the engine, and it was rather difficult to see. And what made it even worse was, not only did I not really have the access to see this component, it was also covered in what looked like sealant. I started thinking at this point, this is going to be a previous bodge, this is, isn't it? So, having something leaking at the back of the engine, and I couldn't quite tell what it was, couldn't quite see it, access was terrible and it was covered in sealant, I decided, let's let the garage have a look at this one. So off I went to the garage, explained the situation, basically told them what I've just told you, and they agreed to have a look at it for me. They charged me 60 quid for an hour's labour, because they had 2 technicians on it apparently, because neither one of them could work out what was leaking, what it was meant to look like, and even if that was the part that was leaking. So he said, I'll get in touch with Peugeot, get a diagram of what this component's supposed to look like, and I'll give you a ring back. Well, a week went by, no phone call. Checked, have you got my right number? Yes, double checked, triple checked. Anyway, after a week, no phone call. Goes in there and he's all apologetic. Sorry, I forgot, I'll get in touch with Peugeot, I'll ring you. And another week goes by, goes back in there, same situation, goes in there a 3rd and 4th time. And after 4 weeks, I'm still no further along. After that first trip to the garage, and they spent, you know, however long looking at it and charged me 60 quid for the privilege, all he was able to tell me was what I had already told him. There's a component at the back of the engine, I think that's what's leaking, but it's covered in sealant and I can't tell what it's meant to look like. So I paid 60 quid for them to tell me what I already knew. And after 4 weeks and 4 trips to the garage and all these promises of we'll ring you back, and it never happened. So 4 weeks later, I'm 60 quid lighter and I'm no better off. So I decided at this point, I'm just going to have a go at this myself. So doing this job myself then, I was going to need any tools that are going to help me see what's happening up the back of this engine. So I used this light that was a gift from my brother, and I used this endoscope that was a gift from my son. And it's an interesting tool, this endoscope, because it's just basically a wire that plugs into your phone and it's got a camera on the end so that you can see what you're doing. The light on the end of it isn't great, but I was hoping that the 2 of them together would help me get this damn job done. So it was back off with the wheel and have a look. So I start having a look with this endoscope to try and see anything, see what I could see, build up a picture of what is this component meant to look like. And I did start to build up a picture. It seemed to have several pipes going into it. I decided to go online, let's try and find it online, and I did find this component called a coolant flange. And when I compared that to the car, this coolant flange had 4 pipes, 2 on the top, 1 on the left, 1 on the right. And when I compared that to the car, there was definitely a pipe coming in from the right, 1 from the top right, maybe 1 from the top left, but the sealant made it very difficult to tell, and I couldn't see what was on the left, but there was probably, I could feel what I thought was a pipe there. So at this point, I'm convinced I need this coolant flange. Only every site that I went on was saying this part doesn't fit your car. But I needed to know. So the only way of knowing was to go through the hassle of taking this part off. The right hand pipe was easy. The top right pipe was relatively easy. They have the stupid Peugeot spring clips on them, but these two pipes were pretty okay, you know, reasonably accessible. At this point I realised that the top left pipe, it isn't even connected. Then there was the mounting bolts that I had to get out, which I could just about see. I could see the bottom one, I could just about see the top one with the endoscope, but it was partially covered in sealant. So it was a case of trying to scrape off and cut off the sealant just to get to the damn bolt to remove this coolant flange. And then there was the left-hand pipe, which was an absolute bloody nightmare. As I say, Peugeot love to use these spring clips, and they're okay. I don't have a problem with them when they're in an accessible place. But round the back of the engine, spring clip, Peugeot, no. That one took quite a while to get off. But eventually we got this component off. It turns out that my car doesn't use that top left-hand pipe, and so it's meant to be blanked off. I thought I could buy one that was already blanked off, and I did find some where that top left pipe was blanked off, but when they blank that one, they delete the right-hand pipe, which just wasn't going to work. So I did have to buy this part that every website said didn't fit the car, and I was going to have to blank it off. It seems that whoever had fitted this part knew that the top left pipe wasn't used and that it needed to be blanked off, only they obviously didn't have anything to blank it off with, and so they decided to use duct tape and sealant. In a long line of bodges that I've found on this car, this one probably tops the lot, using duct tape on a cooling system. So I ordered a new coolant flange with a new seal. I ordered a new blanking cap, which was pricey because it needed to be 22mm, and everybody seems to make 20 and 25. So I had to pay a premium for a 22mm. And I also ordered some Jubilee clips because two of those spring clips were not going back on. So I ordered some stainless steel Jubilee clips simply because I didn't want them to rust up the back of the engine. And on the subject of Jubilee clips, I did try to have a look at the coolant pipes that are at the back of the engine by looking from the top of the engine. I took off this cover, that made no difference. I took off all the ducting here, all this fresh air pipe work here to try and have a look around the back of the engine. That didn't make any difference. So it didn't actually help trying to look from above. But one thing that I did notice was, on the subject of Jubilee clips, is this one right here. What someone has done is, at some point, they've needed a decent sized Jubilee clip and they didn't have one. So they've taken two smaller clips, opened them up to make one big clip. Now, it is a bodge, it definitely is, but I have to appreciate the thought that went into making one big clip out of two smaller ones. So, the parts turned up. We got the blanking cap fitted to the coolant flange before fitting the coolant flange, but then we got it fitted, everything was fine, and whilst the wheels were up, whilst the car was up in the air, wheels were off, I also fitted a new ABS sensor to the front right because that had been tripping the ABS light. So, what's next for this car then? Well, if you take a look here, we still have an airbag fault. And that's being caused by the airbag ribbon behind the steering wheel, the clock spring. That needs changing again in order to get rid of the airbag fault. And after that, well, after that, it'll be time for an MOT.